Girl shouts, "My dad lied again," and interrupts the judge, then surprises everyone with a revelation that changed everything. Before the story begins, comment below which city you're watching the video from. We love getting to know our viewers. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more exciting stories. Enjoy the story and see you soon. The small town in the countryside seemed like a place stuck in time, but beneath the apparent tranquility hid secrets that would change Sophia's life forever. It was just another Saturday, the sun shining brightly, but the shadow of a wrecked car still seemed to hang in the air. In the home of a loving, always smiling woman, Clara, the memories of a happy life faded as the echo of the phone call silenced the stillness of her house. The call of death had come as swiftly as the tragedy that tore her life away. Sophia, her daughter, was playing in the garden, unaware of what was about to happen. She was only 11, but her eyes reflected a maturity that was beyond her age. Andrei, the man who had once been her father, remained distant, as if the family ties had been broken long before that day. Elena, Sophia's grandmother, always by her daughter Clara's side, watched the uncertain future that loomed over her granddaughter, knowing that once again she would be the cornerstone upon which the truth would be built. When the police car arrived at the house, no one imagined that the accident would not only mark the end of Clara's life, but also the beginning of a hidden truth buried under piles of lies and negligence. As the days passed, Sophia observed her father with a mixture of distrust and confusion. Andrei, despite being her biological father, never showed the same unconditional love that Clara had given her. On the contrary, his indifference began to feel oppressive. In the days that followed, a sense of emptiness filled every corner of the house. The laughter and embraces of before seemed like a distant memory, drowned by the silence and coldness of a home that had never been a home. While Andrei tried to present himself to others as a loving father, Sophia saw through his calculated and distant demeanor. There was something about him, something that didn't fit, that made no sense. The neighborhood whispers referred to him as the man who had lost his wife in an accident, but Sophia knew her mother wasn't fragile enough to succumb to a mere traffic mistake. Something didn't add up, and the pieces of that puzzle slowly started coming together in her mind. What was her father hiding from her? That question haunted her more each day, and her instincts told her the answer was much closer than she could have imagined. Elena, her grandmother, became her only refuge. She knew there was more to Clara's death, something that couldn't remain unanswered. In her gaze, Sophia found the strength to face what was to come. She couldn't let her mother remain silent. She couldn't allow her father's lies to erase her history, her truth. Pain and fear transformed into determination, into a fire that burned inside her, pushing her to discover what had really happened that fateful afternoon. But it wouldn't be that easy. Andrei, the man who pretended to be a victim, had his own secrets to protect. And in this dangerous game, the cards were about to be played, and the truths he had tried to hide would begin to surface, one by one, in a way he couldn't predict. Sophia never imagined her life would change so drastically in such a short time. The smell of wet earth and the cool air of her hometown no longer accompanied her. Now, she found herself in a different house, with cold walls and furniture she didn't recognize. Andrei, her father, tried to keep up appearances, to show that everything would remain the same. But Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The house was full of memories, but none of them were hers. From the first day, the silence between them was palpable. Andrei wasn't a cruel man, but his indifference was even more hurtful than any shout. He tried to be the perfect father in front of others, but Sophia knew his actions didn't match his words. Every time she tried to talk about her mother, Clara, he would change the subject with unnerving speed, as if his wife's name no longer had a place in his life. "Everything will be fine, daughter," Andre would say in a reassuring tone, but the coldness in his gaze said otherwise. Elena, Sophia's grandmother, called from time to time, but even her words couldn't dispel the tense atmosphere that had settled in the house. Sophia felt a constant discomfort, as if she were trapped in a place that didn't belong to her. In her mind, the pain of losing her mother was still too fresh, and the emptiness left by Clara only grew whenever she faced her father. What confused Sophia the most was Andre's attitude toward the accident. While everyone, even the neighborhood, spoke about the tragedy with sadness, he seemed to be the only one who didn't show genuine grief. Sophia no longer saw him as the man who had once been her father, but as a stranger living in the same house. There was something dark behind his facade, something Sophia couldn't understand, but she felt that sooner or later she would have to uncover. On an ordinary afternoon while Andre was in his office, Sophia went to her old room. The room, though different, still felt like her refuge. There, among some boxes and objects she had found, she discovered a forgotten envelope, one with Clara's name handwritten on it. Curiosity began to consume her, but just as she was about to open it, she heard footsteps approaching. Her father was entering, and upon seeing her, his face froze. "What are you doing here, Sophia?" Andre asked, trying to hide the discomfort in his voice. Sophia, her heart racing, quickly tucked the envelope into her pocket. Despite the growing anxiety she felt, she couldn't let her father see what she had found. Something inside her told her she couldn't trust him. "Nothing, Dad. I was just looking around," she replied, forcing a smile. But Andre didn't believe her. Something in his daughter's demeanor made him suspicious, but he said nothing more. He turned and gently closed the door behind him. Meanwhile, Sophia knew the answers to her questions would not come from him. Andre wasn't going to tell her the truth, and the more he avoided her, the clearer it became that there was something dark hidden behind his behavior. Intrigue began to consume her. Sophia no longer just wanted to know what had happened to her mother. She needed to know what secrets Andre was hiding. Something didn't add up, and she was determined to discover the truth, even if that meant facing the one remaining family member she had. The clock in the old house seemed to tick slower since Sophia arrived. Every corner felt strange, every room seemed empty, as if her mother's memories were ghosts wandering the place, but something inside her wouldn't let her give up. She knew she had to understand what was happening, and no matter how hard she tried to find comfort in her grandmother Eleanor's company, Andre's secrets kept lurking in the shadows. One autumn afternoon, as the leaves slowly fell in the garden, Sophia decided she couldn't wait any longer. She knew Andre always went for a walk around the neighborhood after dinner, trying to escape the questions his daughter always asked. Taking advantage of that time, Sophia set out to investigate thoroughly. She took the envelope with her mother's name on it that she had found and tucked it into her backpack. Perhaps there was a clue inside. She could no longer wait for answers from a man who had left her alone in this sea of doubts. She rummaged through Andre's office, a space filled with papers, documents, and more documents that, though seemingly harmless, Sophia felt were hiding something more. It was there that she found something that made her stomach turn, a receipt with a date just before the accident. The amount was exorbitant. It was a payment to a company Sophia had never heard of, and the address on the receipt pointed to a place on the outskirts of town, a location that seemed far from everything else. Without thinking, Sophia began to investigate further. Over the following days, with the help of Lucas, a good friend she had known since school, and who shared her desire to uncover the truth, they started making connections. Lucas showed her how to search the internet and read between the lines, like when someone is trying to hide something. Together, they discovered that the company that had received the money had ties to shady businesses, including illegal gambling and usurious loans. Andre was not only tangled in a web of lies, but he was involved in something much more serious than Sophia had ever imagined. One day, just as she was about to reach school, Sophia saw Andre talking to a stranger at the door of their house. The exchange seemed like a normal conversation, but her father's look, cold and hard, was anything but. It was as if Andrei was trying to protect something that shouldn't be seen or discovered. Sophia stood watching from the corner of the street, not daring to get closer, but sensing that the truth was within her reach. Every day, Andrei's behavior became stranger. He no longer just avoided talking about Clara, but he began to act more impatient and nervous. There was something in his demeanor that he couldn't hide. Sophia knew she was getting closer to the answer, but she also felt the danger of what she might uncover. What if everything she suspected was true? What if her mother hadn't died in a simple accident, but had been involved in something much bigger? The truth seemed to slip further away with each attempt Sophia made to get closer to it. But she couldn't stop. She had promised Clara in her heart that she would uncover the truth no matter the cost. The morning air was cold and heavy, as if the city itself was waiting for something that could not be named. Sophia walked to school, but her mind was not on her classes or friends. All she could think about were the clues she had found, the documents she couldn't ignore, and the questions that haunted her. Why was Andrei so desperate to hide something? And what did it have to do with her mother's accident? The image of Clara, her mother, always so full of life, always so warm, seemed to fade more and more with each answer Sophia found. That day, after school, Sophia decided that she could wait no longer. Her heart pounded as she looked at the envelope in her backpack, the one with her mother's name that she had not yet opened. Fear and curiosity mixed inside her, but she knew she had to face it. In the solitude of her room, with the door closed and the curtains drawn, she ripped open the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, there was a letter, written in clean, careful handwriting, but as she read it, her eyes filled with tears. It wasn't an ordinary letter. It was a farewell letter. "Sophia, my daughter, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer with you. I did everything I could to protect you, but there are things beyond my control. Andrei is not who you think he is, and the accident was not an accident. Be careful, please. Don't trust him. Seek the truth, and you'll see what's really happening." Her mother's words pierced Sophia's chest. What had Clara meant by this? How was it possible that Andrei was involved in something so dark? It couldn't be true. Andrei was her father, even though he no longer seemed like the man she had once known. Yet, her mother's words could not be ignored. The pain took over Sophia, but it also sparked a fierce determination within her. She could no longer be a frightened child hiding behind her grief. She had to uncover the truth, and if that meant facing Andrei, then she would do it. The next day, Sophia began to secretly follow her father. She watched him leave the house and head toward a place she didn't know. Lucas accompanied her from a distance, always vigilant, ready to help her face anything that came their way. However, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. Every step she took toward the truth took her further away from the life she had once had, the life that had been happy and simple with her mother. Eventually, she arrived at an old, dilapidated building, a place that seemed completely abandoned. Sophia's heart raced. Why had Andrei gone there? She crept closer, hid behind a tree, and watched. Andrei met with several men. The conversation was not loud enough for her to hear clearly, but the words she could make out froze her blood. They were talking about money, payments, and problems that, apparently, Andrei could no longer solve. Sophia didn't know what to do. She knew she was on the verge of something big, but she also felt like she was walking on a tightrope. Andrei couldn't find out that she was following him. Her father was involved in something she couldn't fully understand, but it was increasingly becoming a real threat. The return home was silent, filled with scattered thoughts. The only thing clear to Sophia was that the truth was just out of reach, but she could no longer stop. She was determined to keep moving forward, and even though fear gripped her, she knew she was not alone. She had Lucas, Elena, and the memory of her mother to guide her every step of the way. The next day dawned cloudy, as if the sky itself was reflecting the storm that had erupted in Sophia's heart. Every step she took brought her closer to the truth, but also further from the path she had once known. Despite her fear, she knew she could not turn back. Something terrible was happening, and her mother had tried to warn her before she died. That afternoon after school, Sophia and Lucas met in the park, the place where they used to share laughter and secrets during simpler times. But now, all that existed between them was the silence of tension. Sophia couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed the day before. The secret meeting of her father, the words from her mother's letter. Everything pointed to something dark, something dangerous. "What are we going to do, Sophie?" Lucas asked, looking at her with a mixture of concern and courage. "Do you have any idea what's going on?" Sophia was silent for a moment, biting her lower lip as she tried to organize her thoughts. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, "I don't know, but there's something more. Yesterday, I saw my dad talking to those men. They were talking about money, payments. It wasn't anything good." Lucas frowned. "What kind of business is your dad involved in?" "I don't know, but it's nothing I've ever known. My mother, she knew something, maybe more than I can imagine." Lucas nodded, knowing that what they were about to do could put them in even greater danger, but he couldn't just stand by. "Sophie, are you ready to face him?" Fear ran down her spine, but Sophia didn't hesitate. "I have no choice, and I won't let the lies control everything anymore." That night, after dinner, André left the house again, this time without telling Sophia where he was going. It was as if he was waiting for her to be distracted, to let her guard down. But Sophia wasn't going to let that happen. She prepared to follow him, determined to uncover the truth, no matter what it meant. Following the same streets as the last time, Sophia approached the building where André had been. This time, however, she realized something was different. Instead of entering as he had before, André stopped at the corner of the street, as if he were waiting for someone. Sophia hid behind a tree, barely breathing, trying not to make a sound. At that moment, a car stopped in front of him, and a man Sophia didn't recognize got out. The man wore a dark suit and looked nervous, as if he were searching for something or someone. The conversation between the two was brief, but their gestures left no doubt. André handed a briefcase to the man, who quickly took it and rushed to get into the car. Sophia observed every movement, every detail. What was in that briefcase? What was really going on? Suddenly, Sophia heard a noise behind her. She quickly turned around and saw that Lucas had followed her, concerned for her. "What's going on, Sophie?" he whispered, looking towards André and the man in the car. Sophia couldn't respond immediately. Her mind was busy trying to understand what she had just seen. But one thing was clear to her. Something very serious was happening. André was not the man she thought he was, and the darkness surrounding his life was much closer than she had imagined. "We need to know what's in that briefcase," Lucas said firmly. "It's the key to all of this." But Sophia knew that getting that information wouldn't be easy. Whatever André was hiding now was bigger than anything she had imagined, and she couldn't do this alone. She needed her grandmother Eleanor more than ever. The nights at Sophia's house had become longer and longer. The silences between her and André were now palpable, as if an invisible wall had risen between them. Sophia could no longer ignore the evidence she had found. Something was wrong, and André was the key to understanding everything. However, every time she tried to approach the subject, he found a way to divert her questions, to avoid confrontations. The next day, she decided she could no longer wait. She couldn't continue living in this lie. She needed answers. Gathering all her courage, Sophia went to see her grandmother Elena. The place where Elena lived had always been her refuge, a place where she could find peace and understanding. Upon arrival, Sophia wasted no time. She sat down in front of her grandmother and with a shaky voice told her everything she had discovered. The mysterious briefcase, the secret meetings, Clara's letter. "Grandma, what's going on? Why is my dad doing all this?" she asked, her eyes filled with desperation. Eleanor looked at her carefully, her grey eyes shining with a wisdom Sophia had always admired. "Dear, your mother knew many things, more than she ever told you." Elena's tone was serious, and Sophia felt that something very important was unfolding before her. "When your mother died, it wasn't just an accident. Everything they've told you, everything they've made you believe, it's not true." Sophia froze. Elena had never spoken to her like this before. "What do you mean?" Elena sighed deeply. "Your mother was trying to save you, Sophia. She found out that Andre was involved in a very dangerous business, one he couldn't control. And not only that, he was involved with people who weren't what they seemed. What happened to her wasn't an accident." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place, but at the same time, confusion overwhelmed her. How could it be that Andre, her own father, was involved in something so dark? What kind of secrets had he hidden for so long? "How do you know, Grandma?" Sophia asked, struggling against the lump in her throat. Elena looked at her with tenderness. "Your mother and I always stayed in contact. She began investigating Andre's finances, and when she realized the magnitude of his problems, she decided she had to act. That's why, when she left you, it was because she wanted you to be safe." Sophia remained silent for a long time, trying to process everything she had just heard. Her mother had never told her anything about this, and now everything made sense. Andre's strange behavior, the lies, the evasions, it all fit together. "What do we do now?" she finally asked, her voice firm, though still filled with doubt. "The first thing is that you need to stay calm. We can't act impulsively," Eleanor said with a worried look. "We need concrete proof, something we can use against him. We can't just go on assumptions." Sophia nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. If she wanted to expose her father, she needed something that could truly incriminate him. She couldn't just rely on the letters and whispers from her mother. She needed to find the truth for herself, with facts that couldn't be ignored. With Elena's help, they began to plan a more calculated approach. They needed more information about Andre's shady dealings, about the people he was involved with, and most importantly, about the money he had been hiding. Elena promised to help her, that together they would uncover everything Andre had been hiding. That very night, Sophia entered her father's study once again, hoping to find something that would finally reveal the truth. She knew that every second counted, and that at some point she would have to face the reality of what her father had done. The week that followed Elena's revelation was a whirlwind of emotions for Sophia. The need to act drove her at every step, but so did the fear that Andre would discover her before she was ready. She knew she had to find the evidence she needed to expose him, but time was running out. Andre was becoming increasingly nervous, his behavior erratic, and Sophia didn't know if that made him more dangerous or if he was finally beginning to lose control. Every night, Sophia spent hours searching the house, going through documents, emails, anything that might give her a clue about her father's dark dealings. But all she found was more evasion, more silence. However, one day, something changed. It was a rainy afternoon when, upon returning from school, Sophia found Andre meeting with a man she didn't recognize in the living room. This man seemed more serious than the others her father had dealt with, and there was something in his gaze that made Sophia uncomfortable. Andre was speaking to him in a low voice, but Sophia managed to hear a few words that sent a chill down her spine. "Don't worry, everything is under control, but if Sophia keeps investigating, I'll have to do something." The threat was subtle but clear. Sophia froze behind the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe what she had heard. Andrei was willing to do anything to protect his secret, even if it meant harming his own daughter. That same night, Sophia went straight to see Elena. She needed to tell her what she had heard, and more importantly, she needed to know how they could protect themselves. Elena received her with the warmth she had always given her, but Sophia noticed that her face showed growing concern. "Grandma, I'm scared. I think he's starting to suspect that I'm doing something. I heard something this afternoon that made me think he's willing to hurt me to protect himself." Eleanor looked at her seriously. "Sophia, you can't do this alone." Her grandmother's tone was grave. "We have to be smart. We have to wait for the right moment. If he suspects, it will be harder to get what we need. You must keep acting as if you don't know anything, as if everything is fine." "But what if it's too late?" Sophia asked, feeling the weight of desperation. "What if he hurts me before we can do anything?" Elena hugged her tightly. "What we need are irrefutable proofs, not just rumors. You know that if he realizes you're searching for something, he'll take action. But I also know that together we can make it." The next day, Sophia received a call that would change the course of everything. It was from Lucas, her loyal friend who had been helping her with the investigation. Lucas had been out of town for family reasons, but something he had discovered in the last few days had intrigued him. "Sophie, I think I found something." Lucas's voice sounded serious, almost fearful. "I was looking into your father's bank records, and there are several suspicious transfers, some payments to an offshore account. It's likely that he's laundering money or involved in something much bigger than we thought." Sophia felt a chill run through her body. This was bigger than she had imagined. "Do you have the proof?" she asked quickly. "Yes, but there's a problem. Everything is under a false name," Lucas replied. "What worries me is that if we keep digging into these accounts, Andrei might find out we're getting close to the truth." Sophia felt the weight of the situation. If Lucas was right, they were about to uncover the key to exposing her father's dark secret. But they also knew that if they weren't careful, Andrei could react unpredictably. Now they had the evidence, but they needed much more than that. They needed someone who could back up everything they had discovered. They needed a plan. "We need to involve the police, Grandma, but only after we have everything we need," Sophia said with determination. It was a cold and quiet night when Sophia and Elena finally set their plan into motion, a plan they had carefully crafted over the past few weeks. Sophia felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. The evidence was almost all gathered. The suspicious bank transfers, the records indicating Andrei was involved with dangerous people, and Clara's letter, which now, for Sophia, held even deeper meaning. But to make sure everything was solid, they needed to take one final step. Sophia knew the time to confront her father was coming. They had decided that before taking any action, they needed to make sure Andrei had no way to escape. She no longer feared his threats. Now she was ready to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The first part of the plan involved the police. Sophia knew she couldn't do it alone, so with Lucas's help, she managed to contact a detective specialized in financial crimes, someone who had already investigated Andrei before, without knowing who he really was. The presence of the detective would be crucial to ensure the evidence couldn't be tampered with. Meanwhile, Elena took care of the second part of the plan, convincing Andrei that everything was fine, that Sophia was finally beginning to accept the new reality, that she wasn't investigating anymore. This would buy them time for the detective and Lucas to get the missing pieces. Sophia sat at the dining table, trying to stay calm. Andrei entered the room with his usual indifferent expression, but there was something in his eyes. He seemed distrustful. It was as if, for a moment, he knew something was about to happen. "Everything's fine, Dad. I finally understand everything," Sophia said with a forced smile, trying to sound convincing. Andre looked at her intently, not saying anything for a few seconds. Then he leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "I hope you really understand, Sophia. I don't want any more problems." It was then that, without warning, Sophia took the next step. "I know what happened to Mom, Dad." The words came out with a weight Sophia never imagined she would feel. The room fell completely silent. Andre froze for a moment, his face twisting in a mix of surprise and anger. "What are you saying?" he asked in a low voice, but filled with unspoken threats. "I know about the transfers, about the people you've been dealing with, and I know it wasn't an accident. My mom died because you didn't protect her." And each word that left her mouth made part of the old fear she had felt like it was fading away. She was confronting her father in a way she never thought possible, and more importantly, she knew that now the truth was about to come to light. "You don't know what you're talking about," Andre exploded, standing up violently from his chair. "You're just a little girl. You have no idea what's behind all this." "I know enough to put you behind bars, Dad," Sophia replied, her voice firm. She glanced at her phone in her hand, where the detective and Lucas were ready to act. Before Andre could react, the detective entered the room, followed by Lucas, who brought with him the irrefutable proof. Sophia was ready for everything, but the relief she felt when she saw her bravery was backed by justice was indescribable. Andre, realizing that the house of cards he had built was about to collapse, tried to react, but it was too late. The detective presented the evidence, and the bank records showing illegal transactions, along with the connection to criminal gangs, were the final blow that destroyed his defense. "You're under arrest, Andre," the detective said firmly. Sophia felt a wave of relief hearing those words. Finally, the truth had prevailed. The courtroom was filled with murmurs, but Sophia felt like everything was silent. She was sitting in the room, accompanied by Elena and Lucas, waiting for the start of what would be a decisive battle. This time, however, Andre wouldn't be able to manipulate the truth. The evidence against him was irrefutable, and all eyes were on him. The people around them didn't know the full story, but Sophia knew the truth was finally going to come to light. The trial began, and Andre sat in front of his lawyer with the same arrogance as always. His eyes, however, showed something different: fear. Although he tried to maintain a confident appearance, his nervousness didn't go unnoticed. He knew time was running out. Sophia took a deep breath and looked at Elena's face. Her grandmother, always so strong and wise, seemed calmer than ever. Sophia remembered Elena's words during the darkest moments of this whole process. The truth always finds its way, no matter how long it takes or how many attempts someone makes to hide it. Sophia felt those words come to life in her mind as she watched her father try once again to manipulate the situation. Andre's lawyer was the first to stand up. "Your Honor, my client, Andre, is a man of principles. He has been a loving father, and the accusation against him is based on unfounded rumors and manipulated evidence. It's important that we do not allow the emotions of a child to cloud our judgment." Sophia felt her heart pound. She knew what was coming. She knew he would once again try to paint her as a confused girl, that everything was just a product of her pain and desperation. But she was no longer that girl. She was no longer afraid of him. She would not let his lies destroy any more lives. Eleanor's lawyer then stood up and presented the evidence, the bank transactions, the records of conversations Andre had had with people involved in shady businesses, and the letter from Clara, which Sophia had found after her death. It was the final piece that confirmed what she had suspected all along. Clara had known she was in danger and had left a message for her daughter, a message that would now serve as key evidence. "This is my mother's will," which explains how Andre was involved in her troubles and how his direct actions led to her death, Sophia said firmly as the judge took note of everything. Andre tried to interrupt, but the judge silenced him with a gesture. The evidence spoke for itself. Sophia felt that justice was finally being served, and that her fight had not been in vain. The last part of the trial was the hardest. The judge had to make a decision. André was on the edge, and Sophia didn't know if she could bear to see how this would all end. But then the judge looked up. "The court has reached a conclusion," the judge said in a grave voice. "After reviewing the evidence presented and hearing the statements from both sides, it has been determined that André is guilty of manipulation, fraud, and causing the death of his wife, Clara." The air in the room filled with a deep silence. Sophia looked at Elena, and they embraced, knowing that at last André would face the consequences of his actions. The lies had been exposed, and the truth had prevailed. Sophia looked at André, whose eyes now showed a mix of anger and desperation. He no longer had control over the situation. Finally, the man who had manipulated their family for so long was paying the price for his lies. "My mom," Sophia murmured, her voice breaking but filled with relief. "Finally, Mom." The room slowly emptied, and Sophia and Elena stayed there still, letting the calm of justice wrap around them. The sun was beginning to set on the horizon, casting a warm, golden light over the city. Sophia looked out the window of Elena's house, the place she now felt was truly home. She had spent so much time in the dark, fighting against lies and pain, that it almost felt surreal, that it was all over. The trial had been the last chapter of a story that had taken too much from her, but had also strengthened her in ways she never imagined. Sophia turned around and looked at Elena, who was sitting at the table, more serene than ever. Her grandmother's presence, filled with love and wisdom, had been with her throughout this whole process. Elena had been her rock, and now at last she could feel at peace. "How do you feel, Mija?" Elena asked with a gentle smile, her eyes shining with pride. Sophia took a deep breath. "I think I can finally breathe. Everything's okay now. I don't have to hide anymore." She looked at Lucas, who had been her loyal friend throughout all this time. He had also been at the trial, offering her his full support, and his presence had been crucial in making Sophia feel like she wasn't alone. "And you?" Sophia asked with a shy smile. "How do you feel after all of this?" "I feel like we've finally done the right thing," Lucas replied, looking towards the garden where the wind was gently moving the leaves of the trees. "And I know that, even though this doesn't give us back the time we lost, now you have the chance to live the life you deserve." Sophia nodded, feeling a mix of gratitude and relief. She couldn't forget Clara, her mother, but she knew that finally Clara could rest in peace. The truth had come to light, and everything Sophia had done had been worth it. In that moment, something inside Sophia changed. Although the wound left by her mother's death would always be a part of her, it would no longer define her. She would no longer live in the shadows of her father's lies, nor in the fear of being rejected. Now, she could look to the future with hope. "I'm scared," Sophia said softly, looking at Elena. "I'm scared that everything will change, that things won't be as easy as they seem." Elena looked at her with tenderness. "Fear is natural, Mija, but courage doesn't mean not being afraid. It means knowing how to face it." Sophia nodded, tears shining in her eyes, but a smile crept onto her face. Finally, after all this time, she felt like she could start over. The following days were peaceful, but full of promises. Sophia began attending school with the confidence that nothing could stop her. She was no longer just a wounded child, but a young woman determined to forge her own path. Elena was always there, supporting her and reminding her that she was not alone. One afternoon, while walking through the park, Lucas stopped and looked at Sophia with a knowing smile. "You know, I've been thinking about something." "What?" Sophia responded, curious. That all of this, everything you've done, is just the beginning. You're going to be someone incredible, Sophia. Don't let what happened limit you. Sophia looked at him and for the first time thought about the future without fear. She had gone through so much to get here. Now, nothing and no one could stop her. "Thank you, Lucas," she said, her voice full of gratitude. "Thank you for always being there." And as the sun set, Sophia knew that although the past would always be part of her story, the future was in her hands. Now she had a new beginning, a beginning full of possibilities. What did you think of Sophia's story and her fight for the truth? A story of bravery, love, and overcoming, where Sophia faces her father's lies and finds the unconditional support of her grandmother Eleanor and her loyal friend Lucas. A true lesson about how the truth, no matter how difficult, always finds its way, and about the power of sincere love. Now we want to hear from you. What moment in Sophia's story touched you the most? The revelation of Andre's lies, or Eleanor's courage in supporting her granddaughter even when everything seemed lost? Leave your opinion in the comments. We love reading what you think. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to see more exciting stories like this. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you next time, and remember, the truth and love always prevail.